Good morning, folks. What's up? This is Michael in the graveyard shift in the wee hours with your daily trivia question. We survived Monday. We survived all that rain that came through a couple of times. And as far as I'm concerned, that was a free car wash because I'm cheap like that. But anywho, that's another story altogether. But anyhow, onward we go through the week. The answer to the previous trivia question was, of course, the one and only Pony Express. The Pony Express was a mail service, which I'm very fond of, studying the history of mail service, which consisted of horse-mounted riders that delivered messages, newspapers, mail, basically everything at the time. Now, it only operated for 18 months between April of 1860 and October of 1861. The entire operation went bankrupt and was basically put out of business overnight when the country's first transcontinental telegraph was established, which was the focus of the trivia question. Now, during its heyday, the Pony Express was the fastest way for messages to travel between the Atlantic and Pacific coasts. On average, it took 10 days to cover about 2,000 miles. Now, I researched this a little bit, and prior to the Pony Express, it was taking well over 3 months for news to reach, for instance, Washington. The death, I think, of President Harding. It was some of the things that surfaced in my research. It took 110 days to reach the West Coast. Totally unacceptable. So the Pony Express made it vital. It was a vital communication messaging service as the most direct means of east-west communication. It was considered to have great financial importance as a result. In the United States. Most importantly, out of the Pony Express, for its short-lived tenure, it demonstrated that a unified transcontinental system of communications could be established, and it could operate year-round. It kind of set the foundations for that concept. Over time, the Pony Express has been kind of romanticized in folklore, stereotype, often exaggerated, really. Some of the stuff that, some of the old urban legend tales that went into the Pony Express have found out not to be actually true. And one of the reasons is they didn't keep any records of this stuff. They knew it existed, but none of the writers kept any records. There's no history of the writers themselves. The men were usually teenage boys, for instance. The horses were usually just mules. They only had to ride 20 miles at a time. It's been romanticized as these cowboys with gunslingers, riding thousands of miles and camping out in saloons and drinking whiskey and so forth. They actually had to sign a waiver that they wouldn't drink or gamble before they chose to ride on the Pony Express. The service was rather expensive too, even by today's terms. It's $5 a letter, and by today's standards, that's about $100. That's like paying for overnight, for goodness sakes. So that's the Pony Express. Now, it's rumored that when the Pony Express was ending, the last rider who rode out as the sun was setting on the final ride of the Pony Express, he got a text that said, OMG, shaking my head, frowny face emoji, all that stuff, that he was unfortunately out of a job. That's a historical fact. I want you all to know. And that, of course, brings us to today's trivia question. Speaking of folklore, speaking of Wild West, this is a pretty cool Wild West story. We'll stick on the Wild West the whole week, maybe. For October 26th, on this day in 1881, a legendary shootout in Tombstone, Arizona, regarded as the most famous in the history of the American Wild West, takes place at this location between Wyatt Earp and his brothers and the Clanton McClory gang. Just a bunch of cowboys, baby. Oh, yeah. Have a good day.
Well, I'm packing up my game and I'ma head out west where real women come equipped with scripts and fake press. Find a nest in the hills, chill like Flint. Buy an old drop top, find a spot to pimp. Then I'm a kid, rock it up and down your block. Go with a bottle of scotch and watch lots of crotch. Buy a yacht with a flag saying chillin' the most. Then rock that jumping down the coast. Give a toast to the sun, drink with the stars. Get thrown in the mix and tossed out of bars. Zip the Tijuana, I wanna roam, find Motown, tellin' fools to come and set up shop at the top of Four Seasons.